Hello and welcome to another lesson of Lindsay Setchell's It's Not Rocket Science when it comes to horse and hoof care. And in this lesson, I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to use my iPad because we've got actual photographs that I'm going to be drawing on and talking to you about. And this case study, this laminitis case study, has been taken from our Facebook group, The Phoenix Way Path to Hoof Health. This is a lady who is in need of great help because she's been battling with laminitis with her horse for 18 months. So let's get into it and have a look at what she's been saying. Hello and thank you for accepting me to the group. I need your help, please. This is a very short summary of our current situation. 18 months ago, my 14-3, 19-year-old cob was in a catastrophic situation. The x-rays showed that P3 in both front feet were about to penetrate. For those of you who are not quite sure what that means that P3 has been rotated and it's about to come through the sole. He was subsequently diagnosed with PPID, that's pituitary pars intermedia dysfunction, and IR, insulin resistance. PPID is also known as equine Cushing's. He was shod, his soles were extremely thin, and his frogs were eaten away with thrush. That I am still fighting now, and I was advised to put to sleep. That already is a shame because at this stage here, horses, many horses can be turned around very, very quickly when we implement a more species-specific diet and management and we start doing correct natural hoof care. But that wasn't done. And what is about to unfold now for this horse and what's going to go forward for the next 18 months of this horse's life is this inconsistency, this battling with hoof care, this misinformation, this misunderstanding about how to treat a foot when it has laminitis and it's starting to distort. So let's move on and read more. Up until this point, I had diligently followed the professional advice being fed to me and had no idea what I was allowing to happen. You don't, right? This is what you do. I will carry that guilt and shame for the rest of my life. He has a large sand area that I have made a mini track on. Good for you. It's not ideal, but I'm in the process of making a larger track for him and the rest of my herd. He always has his elderly brother with him for companionship too. Fantastic. Any experienced advice would be appreciated. Thank you. Well, we're going to give you that advice because I feel for you so much, and your story is so very similar to many stories around the world, and it shouldn't happen. So let's get into this. So these are the x-rays that we have at this moment in time. Here's the left and the right four. So it's front feet as usual. And now horses get laminitis in all 4 feet. It's a whole body problem, but it's usually the front feet that get distorted because of the incorrect hoof care, usually because of the past hoof care and the fact that the feet were already distorted anyway, and that laminitis has been coming on bit by bit over time. So let's have a look at some of these issues that we have here. Well, first and foremost, P3 is still positive. We have very high heels. Oh, that's a bit thick. Let's just take that weight down. We have very high heels. We have this ski tip here, where P3 has been remodeling because it's been sat on its tip for such a long time that you've started to get remodeling of the distal edge and a little bit of osteonecrosis. That's not good, and it doesn't need to happen, and that was caused by hoof care, not because of the laminitis. We also can see that he does have laminitis because he's got stretch here. He has, it's a little bit narrower there and it's much wider here. That's showing you that the lamina has been stretched. Now, I haven't seen the previous x-rays, so hopefully that looks a little better than it did before. But the problem we still have here is a little bit of diet and management, but mainly to do with the hoof care. So let's move on. Let's have a look at the other foot, which is a similar situation. We've got these very, very high heels, which means that the coronary band is almost going to be horizontal. We've also got the fact that he is trying to grow in. You can see just here, he's trying to grow in a more connected foot, but all the time it's not quite getting there. Now that is to do with the diet and the management. The toe is being overly rasped, and you're going to see how much that toe is being rasped back in a moment. So the horse is being forced to walk on its sole. And right here is where pressure is being forced up towards the tip and the distal edge of P3. Plus, P3 is in a hyperpositive position and it's putting more pressure down through onto that solar area. And the horse is is always going to be sore and is always going to be in danger of remodeling P3. Okay, so let's move on. Let's have a look at the left four. So these are the pictures of the left four. Let's do one picture at a time. First and foremost, we can see that the heels are high. And this just isn't correct. But that's about all we can see right now. We don't really know how high just by looking at that picture from the back, but we can see that he's got a big sulcus, which in the past has been more contracted and more full of thrush. On this side view of the horse's foot, we can see a lot more. We can see that the coronary band is almost horizontal. We can see that the heels are very high. This is what we saw in the x-ray. We can also see that here we've got rings that are starting to diverge. So they look like they're diverging. Again, if you want to know more about diverging rings, go and have a look at that lesson on my YouTube channel. But the reason that they're diverging is because of the growth rates. They are not even. They're slow at the toe and they seem to be speeding up at the heel. But that's actually not really what's happening. They're going at the right rate at the heel, but they've been retarded at the toe because all of these little papillae in here aren't getting the feedback that they should, and therefore the hoof wall begins to slow down the growth rate, and that causes that divergence in hoof rings. When you allow that hoof wall to go down onto the ground, no matter how long it is, and in this foot it would kind of look a little bit like this. It would be more like that. When you allow that to go down on the ground, you get appropriate feedback to the papillae, and this enables the hoof wall at the toe and the hoof wall around the entire hoof capsule and the heels all to be growing together at the same time. So you don't get these diverging rings. And diverging rings are a problem because if they diverge so much, this can actually cause pinching in this area here, and that is a serious problem to all the soft tissues that are inside. So we don't want that to happen, and this is all because that toe has been removed. That toe wall has been removed from the ground. Now, we can clearly see what's going on here, where that toe wall has been removed to. This is sole that the horse is being now made to walk on. There is thickness in that sole there, but he should not be walking on that sole, and that is causing him to be very sensitive. They've removed that hoof wall. You can now see exposed the epidermal lamina, which is attached to the dermal lamina. And this just simply is a bad idea. And it's all because they're fearful of something called lever forces. So they feel that if they allow that toe to be as long as this one here, this toe here, then what's going to happen is it's going to tear the lamina and it's going to make the laminitis worse. Well, I've got news for you guys. Everything that you've been doing on this horse for 18 months has not cured the laminitis, and he's still sore and he's still got problems, and his x-rays are still showing that he's got hyperpositive P3. So doesn't that make you scratch your head and think, well, is it actually the toe wall that's tearing the lamina? Because the lamina are still separating, right? A little bit, because of the diet not quite being right, because this horse after 18 months is still not cured from laminitis, and you've still been taking the toe off. So are lever forces anything to do with it at all? Because the horse has not been cured. There's a big question mark right there. Well, we can tell you that there are no extraordinary lever forces, and if you do this kind of hoof care, you are going to continue to distort that foot, put P3 in danger, rotate P3, cause more soreness for the horse, and cause P3 to be remodeled. And it's just a very, very bad idea. And this kind of hoof care sends horses to their graves. Let's just remove that. Okay, let's move on. Right, now we can see the bottom of the foot. I'm going to show you all those three pictures all at the same time. You can see here that we have these high heels. This probably is going to make an awful lot of you gasp already. I can tell you're all looking at that going, oh no. This has been the deep sulcus, which is trying to decontract, but in actual fact isn't happening at all because there's so much compaction in the back of the foot here. This has been allowed to compact that this frog cannot decontract, and it's actually quite useless. This frog is not doing what it's meant to do. We now know that a lot of the venous return goes back this way from the back of the foot toward up the leg towards the heart, all because this part of the foot is a big part of that. It's very functional. It should be very functional and helps that hoof mechanism, helps that venous return. If that is locked down because it's contracted, because it's too big, it's got infections, then that venous return is going to be affected, and that is what's happening on this horse. Let's just rub all of that out for the moment. So look here, you can see that the hoof wall stops about here and that their horse is now walking on his sole. This is such a bad idea from what I've told you earlier, because underneath here is P3 and you're causing pressure to go straight up to P3, which is why he's in pain. And because P3 is being remodeled, right? It's getting a ski tip. It's not good and it hurts. And the more that they leave the heels up and the more they chop the toe, the more they over thin this area because they've got no reference point to balance to anymore, and the more the problems just carry on. So this is really poor, bad hoof care. We've left the heels too high, we've taken away all the wall, we've dumped the horse on his sole, and this is honestly the most common kind of hoof care that we see with horses that have laminitis. So it's just really bad. So let's look at the right fore. Is there anything different on the right fore? No, it's exactly the same. They've removed the toe completely, as you can see here. All this odd white stuff, this is his periople. That's just a waxy layer that protects the horn to hair line, and it's nothing to worry about. But you can see that it's here, and it sort of highlights his rings, really. This green stuff will be, I'm guessing, something they're spraying on there. But you can see that the lamina is exposed. You can see little black bits in here because this is a diseased lamina. Because if you leave the hoof wall in place, all of this just grows out. You don't have to freak out about it and take it off because of lever forces that don't exist. And rasping away all of this when you really don't need to do it and putting P3 in danger underneath here. Okay, so now here, this is one of the reasons that they rasp so hard. One of the reasons is lever forces, because they're frightened it's going to tear the lamina. Like we said before, news for you, it's not helped the horse, has it, in 18 months? And the second thing that they're doing is they're trying to keep the hoof, the hoof pastern axis in line, because they've recognised they've got a distorted foot. Now, rather than realise that P3 is still attached to its hoof capsule inside, they think it isn't attached because the lamina is separated, so P3 is somehow sort of wobbling around inside the hoof capsule. But rather than realise P3 actually isn't doing that and it is still attached, they've tried to make the hoof capsule look normal on the outside. And the only way they can do that is by removing the toe, keeping that hoof pastern axis in line. This is the HPA, that's the hoof pastern axis. They're trying to keep that in line because they recognise that with a healthy foot, the hoof and the pastern are in line. But this isn't a healthy foot. This is a separated foot. And we need to acknowledge that and allow us to see that. But you can't, because you keep trying to disguise it and try and make it look normal, which is the worst thing that you can do, because by doing that, you have to raise the heels, and therefore you also have to chop off the toe to try and keep that in line. This is really old-fashioned, outdated hoof care, and we need to stop doing it, because P3 inside of there is having problems, right? It's hyperpositive, and this part of the tip here is being affected because it's now walking on its sole, and all of this here, you can see here, all of this is sole because he's removed the wall completely, and it's dangerous and it hurts the horse. And it's because the hoof capsule's distorted and they've just not realised. Again, we can see the heels are high here, and we can see that we've got contraction in the back where the foot seems to be sort of being squeezed together. I can imagine that this looks a little better than it did before when he was in shoes. But let's get back down to the sole, and again, what a disaster we see here. So they've tried to remove the bars, but there's so much compacted material around here that they're not really succeeding at all. I don't suspect that we have the true apex of the frog here. That is more likely to be back here somewhere. P3 is under here if it's about a centimetre in front of the true apex of the frog. But to be honest, we have such a distorted foot. Anything can be happening right now. So we have P3 under here getting pressure from the ground because the horse is walking on his sole. That's causing more problems. It's causing him to be sore. The hoof wall has been removed and it's happening on both front feet. Look at it. There it is. It's completely gone. And again here and here. So this horse is trying to get a healing angle. You can see it's coming in here. He's trying to get this healing angle. And if this carried on, we'd have more of this going on. Oops. This is pretty much what we need. So you can see it actually doesn't have enough sole area here because it's just continually being removed, and he's got far too much in the way of heels. That would then do this to the hoof capsule, which would put P3 in a far more comfortable position for this horse. He'd immediately start to get more comfortable, and with the right diatom management, this would start to reconnect and close up, and gradually this would just grow out. And that's how you rehab a horse safely from laminitis. And if you don't start to get this healing angle coming in here, which is this change of angle where the hoof is starting to reconnect with P3, if you don't get that healing angle, you know that's a diet and management issue. So we've got a bit of both still going on here, but that's fine. We can tweak that and help the owner with that diet and management. A little bit more movement needed, and we need to have a look more at that hay. Overall, the owner has really been doing her bit in spade loads. She's been trying so hard with very, very, very little advice. Yet the hoof care professional, the farrier and the vet have misunderstood what they're looking at and consequently have let this horse down. The previous vet and farrier combo did, and now this one. And what they want to do is they want to go to shoes. That's not what's going to cure this laminitis. First and foremost, diet and management, and then getting the right trim. And this horse would then be an awful lot sounder. And hopefully going forward, we'll the P3 remodeling, the ski tip, this P3 remodeling will stop. And hopefully this horse can have a sounder future going forward. It's bad and it's a problem, and we see this kind of hoof care absolutely everywhere. Total misunderstanding about laminitis, about deviating hoof capsules, distorted hoof capsules, growth rates, separating lama, lever forces, mechanical forces, dumping horses onto toe, over thinning the toe because they've now got no reference point to trim to. It's all a big fat mess and it needs to stop. And hopefully now this owner is in our group, we can advise her and help her more and guide her, and finally saving this horse from being put to sleep. So there you go. I can't say I hope you enjoyed that, but I hope you got a lot of information out of that. I'll see you next time for another lesson of It's Not Rocket Science with Lindsay Setchell. Bye-bye.